Welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and I'm a firm believer that even when life doesn't go as planned, it is taking you exactly where you're meant to be. On this podcast, I'm here to help you finally release control of what you think you want and begin to just trust in the ebbs and flows of life. Each week, I will show you how to build that positive mindset, radiate with self-confidence, and cultivate an unshakable resilience. Let me prove to you that even when life ebbs, you will glow. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle, and this week's episode is all about coping skills, anxiety, and social media comparison with my guest, Lindsey Konchar. So in today's conversation with Lindsey, we talk about the ebbs that she's had in her life. We talk about how going through her parents' divorce was devastating, how she was in abusive relationships, and at one point made a plan to take her own life. She eventually, as we all do, got to her glow moment where she changed programs and graduated school and eventually became a social worker where she gets to help many, many people in her professional life. And as a direct result, gets to help in her own personal life as well. Another glow moment for Lindsey very recently is she also launched a book. Her book is titled, I Got 99 Coping Skills and Being a Bitch Ain't One. And her book is all about an evidence-based techniques to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression and improve overall well-being. Lindsey wrote this book to provide everyone with simple, actionable coping skills that she has used for her own clients and in her personal life. And the whole book is a quippy, sarcastic, yet informative starter pack to improving your mental health. So she just launched that book, and I will put a link in the show notes, and I highly recommend getting it and reading it. Lindsey comes to us today from Minnesota, and as I said, is a social worker there. She is a recent mom as well. And even though we didn't get into motherhood today, she also talks about motherhood on her blog. So if you're interested in that, definitely check her website out because she blogs about that as well. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation with Lindsey. If you're loving today's episode, make sure to share it with a friend so that they can get value as well. And also let me know that you're listening by sending me a DM or commenting wherever you're finding this episode. Okay, enjoy. So Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
What made you want to get into social work? And how long have you been in it?
Great question. I always am like, where do I start with this question? So social work, I kind of tell people like there's no way to separate like my personal life from my professional life because they're so intertwined. Like being a social worker is so a part of who I am. And it started actually, I was 12 years old when my parents filed for divorce. And then I was 15 when they finally finalized. And it was a really, really drawn out, really petty, really just problematic process. Like they were not very kind to each other. And I think they just started becoming absent for their own reasons and in kind of different ways for us. And so it was like my brother and I almost just like lost parents during that time. And so then I was also in a really horrible relationship. He was entirely abusive. And because of that, then I started losing a lot of friendships. And so I was just in a really, really bad place when I was 15. And then I actually made a plan to take my own life when I was 16, and I had the whole thing ready, set, go. And I was at my dad's house, but he's a realtor. So he works from home a lot of the time. And so I had him call me out of school, told him I was sick and had him bring me to my mom's. And I just said, I just need like the day, watch TV or whatever. And my plan was to go forth with it at my mom's house. And so we showed up there. And then when I walked inside, she was home, which was very not planned at all. So obviously I just went up to my room and I didn't go forth with it. And then I sort of took a lot of time to just kind of reflect and be like, maybe this is a sign. Maybe I am supposed to be here and maybe that's it. And so then I just kind of did a lot of like evaluation and was like, okay. And then I got myself out of that relationship. And that was kind of where I turned my corner. I started seeing the school counselor at my high school who was absolutely invaluable. She was amazing to work with. I just loved her and was just a really big help to me. And then it was actually the following semester that I took my first psych course in high school. And it was like, click, boom. Like, it was like so eye-opening because especially then, and I don't think it's really gotten much better, to be honest with you, but we didn't really talk about mental health. We didn't talk about any of that stuff. So like none of my friends knew I was having those suicidal ideations, that I had a plan, nobody knew anything. And so once I had that psych course and understood like, oh, there's these diagnoses and this is how the brain works. And oh, that totally translates into your behavior and, all these things. It was so just eye-opening for me. And it was like, boom, done. So then fast forward into college, I graduated with my undergrad in psych. And then ended up getting my master's degree in social work. And so I graduated with my master's degree in 2019. And so I've been licensed ever since.
It sounds like that school counselor had such a big impact on your life that you were like, okay, if she can have that impact on my life, imagine the impact that I could have on others and so many other people. Like she changed the direction of your life.
Oh, entirely. She actually, I will never forget, vividly. I remember sitting in her office across from her and we talked about home life, but we also talked about, trajectory of college and whatever. And she literally said to me, I want you to take my job one day. I think you would be such a good person to sit in this seat one day. And I remember looking at her being like, you're crazy. I don't want to work with high schoolers. No chance. And then I ended up actually in my master's program. I initially was going to school for school counseling. That was my first program I was in. And then at the time, I was also working inpatient psych at an inpatient psychiatric hospital with all the patients. And the social workers at that job pulled me aside and they're like, you can't be a school counselor. There's no room for growth. It's a lot of lateral movement, which is kind of true. And so I was like, well, I don't know what a social worker does, And then they actually took me to coffee and were like, this is why you need to be a social worker, and just kind of explained to me how many different doors kind of open as a social worker. You can still work in schools or you can work in, 1,000 other places with 1,000 different populations. And so school counseling as a high school counselor would be still an option, but other options also. And so I ended up actually withdrawing from that initial program that I was in and accepted in and a semester deep in. And then I simultaneously applied to the social work program at the same school. And I ended up taking another gap year because of it, but it was so worth it. Because like I said, I love the idea of being in schools and maybe one day I'll do that. But then the experiences that I've had since and the places that I've worked, I'm just so happy with how it went. But yes, that school counselor, she's one of the biggest reasons why I'm at where I'm at. And it's just, I have so much gratitude towards her for sure.
And I also want to point out the people that are brought into our life, it's no accident. Never, ever an accident. She needed to come into your life to be able to show you this path that you inevitably are on now. And also be able to show you that it's okay to not be okay today. And you're a high schooler, you're going through stuff, but there is a path to get out of that as well.
Yeah, totally. And I completely hear you and I completely agree with you. She was definitely, she was kind of put in that place because it was there's a multitude of school counselors at that school, but I ended up having her for a reason. I feel that in my heart for sure. And I feel like that so many times throughout my life, some people I would love if they had stayed in my life a lot longer, but they haven't. And I just have to know that they were there in that moment for the reason that they were. And it's true.
I want to talk about when you told me your parents got divorced. I thought they got divorced when you were in high school, but you just said it was basically your entire life growing up was them going through a divorce. Why did it take so long to finally get divorced? 10 years? Yeah.
No, so 3 years.
Oh, okay.
No. I was 12 when they filed and then 15. But they were never happy. That,
they never are.
And as a young kid, you don't know that, but it was oh, why does daddy sleep on the couch every night? So the relationships that I saw growing up were unhealthy and they weren't compatible on a lot of different scales. And so, yeah, no, the whole thing probably took about 3.5 years once it was finalized, but they had separated once before. They were separated for, I think, about a year, got back together for a couple of years. Then, so it was, so yes, it was really my whole childhood. And it just was messy. And, and they had really hard stuff going on in their own lives. But I remember my brother and I were trying to be sneaky and we're like, why is this custody battle happening? We know what we want. Let's just figure out. So we were digging through paperwork, trying to figure out where the courtroom was so we could go there and just be this is what we want. Why doesn't our opinion matter on anything? Nobody's asking us anything. And this happens, I would say, so much is the parents going through this really hard time. I'm not saying, divorce is, I hope I don't experience it, but it is so challenging. But I think so much of that, like, you're still a parent. And I think that was forgotten in our situation. And I've seen it, happen in situations with my patients and with kids that I've worked with, from their parent. And so it's a tough thing to go through. But like I said before, directly impacted my life, who I am, how I operate, and so many things, my relationships, my career, how I interact with people. Like, there's no way to separate it. And it's just definitely shaped and molded a lot of who I am. Probably for the better, for the worse, I don't know, for the different.
So many people's parents get divorced when they're growing up. And you said it. I went through a similar scenario where it's like, your parents aren't happy. And I don't understand why they stay together. It's actually so much worse for the kid for us to be watching an unhealthy relationship. Why do they stay? Like, from a social worker standpoint, like, why do parents like stay and just like are miserable?
I think because you feel like a failure. If if you get divorced from a society standpoint, it's seen as you're failing, and getting past that. And I think like of course in marriage, there's hard times, and hard times that might last a couple of years. But I also don't think that people necessarily take the right steps and follow. It's a very, very, very broad spectrum, I would say. I'm hoping that is changing a little bit. Like, if you get divorced, that's okay, but you have to still co-parent, and you still have to be able to operate with those person. Because the fact is, like, you made a choice to like get married at some point. And if you ended up having children with that person, that you're in that for life. Like, that is a lifelong decision. You don't get to just like throw your hands up someday and say, oh, I'm not going to parent today. And unfortunately, that's what happens. And I remember a lot of my friends' parents were together, but there was a friend of mine who his parents had gone through a divorce, and we were young and doing the dumb things where you're like, oh, well, it's your mom's weekend, so let's go to your dad's house because he's gone for the weekend, whatever.
Yep, and did a lot of that with my friends.
Oh, totally. It's like what you do, right? And it was like a group of us and whatever, a couple guys, a couple girls, and we were all just hanging out. And his mom came at home to his dad's house. And I was like, what in the heck is going on? And I remember we got in trouble. We got sent home. And I remember talking to him to the next week and being like, well, I don't understand. Like, your mom just came into your dad's house. Like, how did that even happen? That would literally not, like, my parents didn't even talk. Like, they talked through lawyers. Like, even good or bad things happening in my brother's life, like, they did not talk. It didn't matter. And he was like, I don't know. Yeah, my parents still like hang out. And I was like, what? He was like, well, yeah, like, we still like do stuff. Like, we'll go to dinner as a family and stuff. I remember being so just floored. Like, what are you talking about? They still talk. And it was like, oh, people can co-parent. Like, they weren't in love with each other anymore. They recognized it early on enough. They didn't start hating each other. The custody battle, the whole finances, it wasn't that messy for them. It was like, hey, this isn't working for us anymore. And they split, and they were respectful. And then they still were like in there together for the kids. And it was amazing. And it was beautiful. And I was like, we need a little more of that.
Why do you think your parents' divorce was so different then? Like, why couldn't you guys do a family dinner? Like, why was there so much like resentment and pettiness?
I don't think I even know the extent of it. And frankly, I don't know if I even want to. I don't think that they were ever like compatible. Like, from what I know, when they like started their relationship. And also, if you consider back then, like, I think my parents got married when they were about 30, and my dad was actually almost 35, which for however long ago that was, 40 years ago. That was actually quite old for like, Midwestern, like their age, whatever. And so I think it was a little bit of like pressure, like, okay, we need to either do this and we need to like have kids and we need to like start our lives that way. And so I feel like there was a little bit of pressure that way. And then I don't know though, like neither, to the best of my knowledge, my parents didn't cheat on each other. I think a lot of it had to do with finances. I know a lot of it actually had to do with finances. They disagreed entirely on how to spend money, how to save money. I think, and my mom has told me, she's never had interest in learning about how money works. And so she didn't really know. And then my dad was getting in trouble with different things. And so, that's a huge reason for divorce, right? Is financial obligations and fights and disagreements and whatnot. And I think that's number one, like, get on the same page. I think if we're looking at it from like a macro level, like not just my parents, but from like the larger scale, we know that sex and money and now communication / like social media, phones, technology, those are like the top reasons for divorces. And so I wouldn't say technology was probably involved in theirs, but I think there's probably, like I said, more details to it that I don't quite understand. And I don't know.
How do you think, and I'm asking this because again, I went through a divorce, but my parents didn't divorce until I was 18. So completely different ball game. But I want to know, How do you think your parents' divorce and your parents' dynamic affected you in your romantic relationships?
Oh my gosh. I mean, just absolutely immensely. I like for me, I never wanted to get married. It was always just almost like icky. So like my mom has many siblings, and of all of her siblings, they've all been divorced except one couple is still together, happily married. They've been together for, oh gosh, I don't even know, 35 years or something like that. And they're thriving. But everyone else, all of her siblings were divorced and not clean, all of them. And so, I'm sure that has to do something with her parents and their parents. Like, my mom's parents were divorced and had a really messy relationship too. And so it just trickles down. And so I was very adamant, like, I don't want to get married. Like we were like the family that would like drive by a wedding and my parents or my mom or somebody in the family would make a joke like, oh, there's a funeral.
And that's the narrative that you're hearing growing up.
Totally. That's bad. Right. So for me, it was like, I don't want that. I could be happily in like a committed relationship and not need to be married to the person. Like I was just like, I don't know, I can be just as committed whether I have a marriage license or not. But the man that I did end up marrying, he came from a totally different background. His parents are very happily married and both of their parents are married. And I do think that has, generational things have a lot to do with it. And not only are they married, but they're happily married. They communicate well. They, they've had their ups and downs, of course, but they've just really been good role models. And so when I met him, that was like one of his, this is it. Like we are getting married if we're going to stay together. And that was something that he really wanted to solidify the commitment that way and whatever. And so I was like, you know what, I care enough about you that's fine. Like it's a piece of paper. And I'm so happy that I did. And so I just feel like now I've worked really, really hard. So much of like my schooling has been self-discipline, self-awareness, just a lot of like internal stuff, because as social workers, as therapists, as, whomever, we need to know what our own biases are. We need to know what we're bringing into the room, what we're bringing to the table, what we're offering to the world, essentially, and to our clients and patients and everything. And so it's a lot of that work is what we're learning, and as well as, how to communicate properly with people and whatnot. And so I think all of that work, so much of my professional life has been translated into like, okay, how do I have successful relationships in my personal life? Throughout grad school, like I was in therapy to not only make sure that I was like surviving grad school, but also making sure that the relationships around me, my support was there. There was the systems in place. I know my parents went to therapy. I don't know what that looked like. I don't know who said like, okay, this is time. We need to go to therapy. I don't know what the work was done outside of therapy, because that's huge. It's like, yeah, you can go to an appointment once a week for an hour, but what's that going to do? Like there's homework involved, there should be homework involved, whether that's reading or reflection or whatever. But in my relationship, it's very clear. Like, I think my husband and I have been to therapy maybe 3 different times, and we've been together 6.5 years, like total from like when we met.
And no shame around that at all because of your background.
None. Yeah. It was a little tough at first. I just told him, we went for a walk one night and I was like, look, there's a misfire here. I don't know what it is. And I couldn't even tell you. It was a pretty minor thing. I don't even remember like what it was, to be honest, but it was something small enough where I was like, it's not a huge deal right now. It's really not. So let's go get it taken care of before it becomes a big deal, because I can tell whatever it was like, this resentment is going to build and I don't want to get to a place where I resent you and then we can't turn back. So let's just go hash it out, figure it out. I think we went to 2 sessions and it was like, oh, whatever it was me. And I can't remember now. Gosh, I wish I could. The therapist was very much like, Linz, how are you interpreting this? And I, said or whatever. And I needed a total like thought reframe and to switch how I was perceiving something. And then it was like, boom, we're done. And that was it. And it was like easy fix. We caught it super early. And it's just like sometimes in whether it's your own single life or it's in a relationship with your best friend or it's your partner or whoever it is, sometimes the tide just gets a little too high and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm getting to an unsafe place here. Like, let's just take it back a bit. And you need somebody to bounce an idea off of. And it's not always going to be that easy. Of course, I am sure at some other point in life, we will need to go to therapy for a couple months or something. I don't know. As long as we're both aware enough that we're communicating and we're talking, and I love him and I want to be with him forever. So it's like, why wouldn't I go and do something to fix it and to help it and to make sure that we stay in this and we're in like such a better place after that. And it is easier for me because I am. So I'm like, everyone should go to therapy. It's amazing.
Why do you think there's so much shame around couples therapy?
Again, I think it's seen as like you're failing, like, oh, you can't do it on your own. I think we're getting a little better. Like, I really do. I think some people are a little bit more open about the fact that like, oh, haha, we have therapy today or whatever. Couples, I would say actually maybe not as much. Individual, definitely people are a little bit more haha, I have therapy. And this is my therapist said. But I think it just goes back to the like what people think about you is like so ridiculous. And it's, I mean, definitely a social media thing. I mean, in general, I just think it's like a problem. And it's like, I don't know a single other couple, now that we're saying this, and I'm thinking on it, I don't know another couple that's been to therapy that's, you know, I'm 30. I don't know, like, and maybe they haven't, maybe they haven't, but it's definitely not something that people like openly talk about. Maybe I put it all out there a little too much, but I'm just like, I don't know. I guess I don't care if like somebody else doesn't think my relationship is top notch because we needed to go and talk to somebody a couple of times. Like, I don't care what you think because it's about me and my husband, you know, it's about us and our relationship and where we're at. And I think it's probably the stigma. I think it's mostly the failure aspect. And we need to put on this like shiny, glossy filter that everything is hunky dory and life just isn't. It's just not always.
I feel like people, especially couples, don't look at therapy as preventative. They think of it as, okay, if I'm going to therapy, it means we're at the breaking point and this could end. But it's like you said, if you get ahead of it, if you feel like a little bit of resentment's building up and like a couple of like things that you're miscommunicating about, if you get ahead of it, then when bigger problems come up, you'll probably be able to tackle them a lot better.
You'll have the tools, and that's just it. And that's, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is 100%. That's like my biggest pet peeve, I think, in the world in general is like we are so reactive in everything that we do, whether it's in schools, whether it's, you know, it's like, oh, this kid has been failing his class for the last 3 semesters. Like now let's maybe focus on the fact that he has an F. It's like, okay, well, why did his grades start slipping 3 semesters ago? You know, like what was going on then? What can we put in place? And of course, not just in schools. I mean, that's everywhere. It's work. It's everywhere in our lives. And we are just like notorious for like, oh, fire over here. Let's bring the hose over. Oh, meanwhile, we're missing the 6 fires over here that are going up in flame, you know, and it's like, oh, wait, maybe we shouldn't have put the kindling everywhere. Let's just put the brakes on. And I think we need to be more preventative. I think people need to practice some tools and coping skills and techniques and things and do the work before you're in the trenches of it. Because when you're in the deep waters, it's so much harder if you were just like, brought the life jacket with you. It would have been fine, you know, but instead we're just like drowning and hoping that somebody shows up and saves us. And the end of the day, like you are it, like you're there, you're for yourself and you need to put yourself first and make sure that like you're not relying on other people for your happiness, that you're not relying for other people to like put these fires out for you. What can you do? What can you like bring to the mirror and be like, okay, this is what's bothering me. How am I going to show up today? How am I going to like be present with the people around me and these different things? And I think that's huge. The prevention thing is huge.
You wrote a full book about coping mechanisms, but until you had the tools and understood the right coping mechanisms, pre-knowing everything about social work and everything that you do for your career, what were your coping mechanisms before?
They've definitely changed, I would say, over the years. And I think they probably will continue to change. For me personally, like when I was in high school, I journaled all the time. Like that was a huge, you know, I had my diary or whatever. And so now it's like journaling is like totally not my thing because I feel like I'm back to like 14-year-old girl who is just like, you know, crying over her horrible relationship or something. But I should say there's a multitude of ways to journal and maybe at someday it will feel right for me again. Right now, it's just not for me, but it is an excellent coping skill for some people. But yeah, and I think always, I've consistently, as long as I can get outside from the day I walked out of the womb till now, it's like if I'm outside, I feel so much better. Gosh, I don't even know. I would say for a long time, I like refused to drink water. And let me just say, coping skills aren't necessarily like these huge things that we have to do. They're just like small little lifestyle changes that we need to be intentional about and be implementing purposefully in our lives. And so like now I'm like, oh, do I have a headache? Did I drink any water today? Oh, no, I don't. Like, that's my first line of defense. You know, I'm not going to the cupboard to get an Advil. I'm going to the fridge to get some water and then see if that helps. Same thing with like mind fog or whatever. And so I know I've been really intentional, you know, for probably the last 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit longer about making sure water is like, I'm like, oh, now my mom calls us aquaholics. Like she's like, we like just love water. So
it actually saves a lot of things. Like it's a good fix.
It's such a good, and like, if I'm having a really hard time, like I said, and it could be anything, I'm like, okay, well, what's my first thing? Just take a small step and, you know, take a deep breath and drink some water. It's like so simple, but we forget and we like get caught up in like the distraction. Like, oh, as I'm walking to the fridge, I also saw 6 other things that need to be done around my house. And then I get, it's easy to get caught up. I'm not saying it's not like it's so easy to take a sip of water, but it's also so easy to get distracted on your way there. It's hard to even think back because now I feel like I've known these things for the last 15 years of my life. Like
So you're like, I don't even know a life before that.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess not that I've been, coping very extremely well for 15 years with everything, but I would say, yeah, it's hard to not think because I have been very fortunate that I feel like I do have a lot of skills, and I was going to therapy when I was then, in high school too. So I've been in therapy kind of off and on, building different tools and things.
When you are with clients or when you do the work that you do, or even just like being in this field, you're hearing and reading about it all the time. What do you find are some people's coping skills that are extremely counterproductive?
Yes. My favorite maladaptive coping skills. Number one, for sure, drinking. For sure is drinking. I think maybe that's not number one, but it's definitely
number one for me. That's for sure.
Right? It's so easy because it's so socialized. It's like, oh, you had a bad day. Let's go to happy hour. Let's go grab a drink, which I love my glass of wine. Don't get me wrong. But if you can recognize that like you're not in a great headspace, I actually write that in there. Like limit drinking is one of the coping skills that I actually talk about because it's not just adding things in, it's taking stuff away too that is unhealthy. Again, intentionally, things like I do dry January every year. It happens to be a month that we really don't have a whole lot going on. I'm like totally like the New Year's Eve girl where it's like new year, new me. I love it. I don't, whatever. Some people hate that, but I love it. And so it is. It's just been like a good 31 days, like a reset. There was one year I was in New York City with a girlfriend of mine. The restaurant we were in was overcrowded and they asked us if we would move to a smaller table. It was just the two of us. We were at a 4%. They wanted us at a 2%. We were like, yeah, of course. That's, no big deal, whatever. We moved and they brought us a complimentary glass of champagne just as a huge thank you. Like they were like so appreciative. It was dry January. Yes, I could have said no, but I was like, you know what? I'm in New York with my best friend. Like, let's just have a glass of, so if it's like not 100%, I didn't kill myself over it. It's just, it is what it is. So like, that's one thing you can do, or like just establish like Tuesdays, I'm not drinking ever for the year. That's 52 days automatically out of the year that you're not drinking. Right.
And it's so simple. It's one day.
It's one day and you can choose 2 days. And then if you're at 104 days that you're just not drinking, it's just that's like a non-negotiable, So just like little things like that. Or like I said, just being maybe the person in your friend group that like throws a wrench in it. And it's like, hey guys, what if we didn't go to the bar for happy hour? What if we like all took our dogs to the dog park? What would that look like? Or what if we went disc golfing? Or what if we, like there's so many other activities that we can do, but it is so much easier to be like, hey, let's grab a drink. It's fun. It is. I get it. But if it's going to lead to one thing and then to another, and then you're going to wake up with anxiety like everyone's been getting lately, not worth it. Today's happiness with your drink isn't worth tomorrow's regrets, right? So
I hate anxiety. It's the worst. You're like, oh, did I say too much? Did I hurt someone's feelings? Like, did I overshare? Like, it's awful.
Yeah. And you just ruminate and you sit on that. So like literally your whole next day, maybe 2 days is just totally taken up by it. And then it becomes a cycle. Like you've been anxious all day and now you deserve another glass of wine that night. And then maybe it leads to another one. And then you're like, oh, should I text this person? Yeah, sure. Why not? Oh, wake up the next day. Like, maybe I should, that's definitely one that I'm like, it's hard, but it's just say no, like just stick to it. And your friends will be supportive. If you have one of your good girlfriends come to you and say like, hey, I'm trying to lay it off a little bit. Like I just, clear my mind a bit. I would never be like, oh, that's stupid. Like we wouldn't do that. So share that with people and like, don't try and do it alone. Just have a little bit of support around it and people will support you and people will help you. And again, that doesn't mean that like, you have a huge problem, you're an alcoholic. It doesn't mean that. It just means like, let's chill out for a little bit, a couple of days, maybe a month, whatever, and see how it goes. See how you feel. Do you feel better? Is it not really making a difference? Okay, well, let's reevaluate then. I also think the biggest one is social media. That was probably actually the biggest one. I know I said drinking, but I think social media comparison game is just so hard. And I catch myself even, it's like, oh, I had a tough day or something. I just want to go through and like scroll my phone for a while. And I'm like, did that help at all? Like when I get off the scroll, even if it's just like, I mean, sometimes like a mindless scroll is totally fine, right? Whatever. If I'm just like sitting there for far too long, scrolling through, looking at videos, whatever, does any of that help me?
So much waste of time too.
So much waste of time. Yeah. And that one gets in the way of individual coping well. but it also gets in the way of relational coping. It gets in the way of productivity. It gets in the way of, right? It's like, oh, I don't have time to do anything. I'm so busy. But like, we also spend 3 hours a day on our phones. So
just scrolling
and just
like
social media.
doing nothing. I know I'm a culprit of it as well. And I have so much guilt and shame afterwards saying like, oh, I just wasted my life away. I'd rather just watch a movie or documentary. At least that time would have been better used. And then it's like, oh, I didn't get this task done. Oh, I didn't hit this goal. And it's like, I wonder why.
That one is really tough, but there are so many things that we can do also. If you put your phone in a place that like you can't reach it when you first wake up in the morning, like you have to like let your feet touch the floor before we hit email or Slack or Instagram or TikTok, whatever. That is going to help you so much, because it's like my feet are on the floor. I'm already up. Why would I go get my phone just to lay back down? Like, go start your day. I catch myself in that even still. It's like, there was like a week I was like so deliberate. Like, I'm not touching my phone for, the first half hour that I wake up. And I was like a machine. Like, my house was cleaner than ever. Like, I was getting stuff done. I felt so much better, just so much more in control. And then, life happens, and sometimes you slip back into your old ways and whatever. And I would find like by day like 3, it was like I wasn't even touching my phone for the first 3 hours of the day. Like, I just didn't even
You
care.
didn't crave it anymore.
Like, I didn't need to look at it. The other thing that I think is really, really helpful is because it is so habitual to just grab your phone right away, whether it's you're turning off your alarm clock or not, and you just, it's a habit to grab your phone. The other thing that I have found really, really helpful is in my notes app, I keep a gratitude list. Every morning I'm able to start the day with then just 2 really specific things that I'm grateful for. So, literally, like, I think the other day it was like my electric toothbrush. I love that thing. It always makes my teeth feel so much more clean than just a regular toothbrush. And that's enough. It was like, okay, I got my phone fixed for whatever reason. I needed it in my hand. I got my little like dopamine hit, and then I'm able to put it down. I don't need to click into the other apps, but I've started my day now with gratitude. I still have the habit of grabbing my phone, but I've changed the habit. Instead of clicking Instagram, I click the notes app, and then I can move on. And that always feels really good, because then I notice throughout the day, I'm looking for things that I can add on tomorrow's gratitude list. Like, oh, I am so grateful that the sun is shining and I get to sit on my deck right now. Like, amazing. Like, how lucky am I? I can add that in tomorrow's list. Whatever the case may be, I find myself looking for things to add. And what a better way to live throughout my whole day is like, oh, I'm looking for things to be thankful for, as opposed to like, I starting my day with the comparison game. Oh, I wasn't as skinny as her. Oh, I wasn't as smart as her. Oh, I didn't have as many followers, whatever. And so it's so much easier to live life that way.
The whole law of attraction, like the energy that you're going to get back with that, I'm sure you've seen it in your life tenfold.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I'm just radiating a different type of energy than when I start with that, than if I'm like just doing the doom scroll for the first 45 minutes and then all of a sudden, oh shit, I'm late. And, it's just like it's one thing after another. So those 2 are probably the top 2 maladaptive things that I think we're, notoriously doing, just again, maybe at like a higher level society. It's hard sometimes, and I talk about this a little bit in the book, but I genuinely feel like people are individuals, and I have that lens so strongly that like we get caught in these traps of generalizing, and that can be anything. Oh, she's Democrat. That means that she must believe this, this, and that. Oh, he's Republican. That must mean that he's this, this, and this. And it's like, that is not true. Like, that's not how it is. And sometimes generalizations can be made and have to be made, right? We can't function like living constantly as though everyone needs to be an individual. But in our singular interactions, we are individuals, and we really, really, really need to remember that. And again, that does go back to the social media thing, where it's so easy to put everyone in a box. Like, oh, she's a 30 and having this high paying job, and she has this and she has that, whatever. And she must be like so happy. And it's like, well, what don't you know about her though? Like, there's so many things that you don't know. That's another thing. And I just think it's really important to, remember that like drinking, social media, yes, those are generally speaking bad things, but I know that the individual is also probably doing things that are maladaptive for themselves, whether that's a mindset shift, if that's ways that they're moving their body or not moving their body, things that they're eating, their diet, their intake, and consuming outside of just like food wise. There's a multitude of maladaptive coping skills out there for sure.
Why do you think we spend so much of our time comparing ourselves to other people?
It's been like that forever, right? Like, keeping up with the Joneses was the thing. Now, then it was keeping up with the Kardashians, and now it's keeping up with everybody. It's like we're in this like weird game of making sure that like we're in a competition and we're like one-upping people. And somewhere along the line, we forget that average is totally fine. I think it
But
was.
what does that do to our mood, our self-confidence when we're constantly watching what everyone else is doing and comparing ourselves to them?
Totally plummets. Absolute plummets. It's horrible for it. You know, it's like we're never going to hit the standard that we're really setting for ourselves. It ends up being a self-destructive game because everyone's playing, but they're playing just with themselves. So if you start competing with yourself, you're going to be in a lot better shape. What did I do today that was better than yesterday? Ask yourself that question. That's going to get you a lot further than what did I do today that's better than what Jessica's doing over there. You know, like who cares what Jessica's doing? It all comes back to being aware and bringing attention and being intentional about these things, because it is like we're in this phase of like we're going through the motions of life sometimes, and it's just because we're busy and we have all this stuff that we need to get done, and if we're not hustling, life is over. And unfortunately, that's one, that's just not true. And secondly, we need to like start embracing rest. If you want to just take that break, take the break and don't post about that. I was going to say there's a book, and I want to say it's Dave Ramsey's daughter. And now I'm blanking on her name, but she wrote something that was like, why, and this is maybe going to kill you a little bit because you're a realtor, but she was like, where in the game of life, like, why do we need matching washer and dryer? This is something I would have never thought of, but it was pointed out to me, right? And it was always because like we need top of the line, we need the best stuff. It's what looks nice, it's whatever. But if you just need one, like your washer breaks, and they don't have the same model and style, and you just need a washer, why are you spending an extra couple $1,000s on a new dryer too? Things like that, where it's like the finances is totally involved in it. So it's just like little things. It's like, yeah, I don't live in the biggest, bestest, nicest house. I don't. And that's okay, because right now we want our goals, and our lifestyle is different. We want to travel. We want to do these other things. And if I was house poor, then I'm not going to be able to like achieve these other goals and experience these other cultures and things that I want to do in my life. So we need to start getting a lot more clear on our personal goals, on what we want for ourselves, rather than caring about Jessica
Jones.
Yeah, right.
No, I feel you. I find, especially our age, we get so caught up that everyone's lives look amazing. So it's like, okay, she has a new outfit. Okay, do I need a new outfit? We don't even think about all the other outfits we have. Oh, they have that car. Oh, they have that apartment. Oh, they have that relationship. And it's like, we always assume everyone else's lives are better than ours. And we don't ever look internally to say, what she has, is that even what I want?
Right. Right. Sometimes you are going to feel envy. Some people are doing really cool stuff. Like, believe me, one of my best friends is like a world traveler, and she just goes, and it's like the coolest thing. And I'm like, girl, living your life would be awesome some days. And other days I'm like, I wouldn't want her life. I'm happy with mine. Very, very happy with mine. So I think going back to like asking yourself and creating that space for, what are my goals today? What can I do better? What can I do differently? That's going to propel me forward in the direction that I want to go, and make sure that you're staying true and aligned to like what you want, for sure.
I know. And sometimes people are afraid to ask themselves, what do I want?
It can be a really hard question to answer too. It's like, if you've never really sat down and thought about it, you might be stuck, and then break it down a little bit. If it is too broad of a question, like, okay, well, what do I want for my career? Or what do I want my relationship to look like with myself and with the people around me? What do I want? There's easier ways to like not make it so like broad and all consuming, because it's like you need to figure out the pillars of who you are and what first and foremost matters. Like, one of my core pillars, I would say, is environmentalism. Like, I'm not great at it, but making sure I'm doing some of my part to help, not destroy Mama Earth at an incredibly fast rate. And some people just don't give a shit about that. And that's their prerogative, like, that's not for me to decide if they should or should not care about it. Like, if we were all the same, how boring would that be?
I want to ask you, I'm more curious about the title of your book, but the second half of it, and being a bitch ain't one. Where did that come from, and why?
Well, it's a play off of, I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. And so I don't know. It kind of like just came to me one day. I was like, what if you didn't have 99 problems? What if you just had 99 coping skills and were able to cope better with your problems? And the bitch ain't one part I thought was fitting because, this actually took me quite a long time, even with all the work and stuff that I've done, but I am a projector for sure. And so when I'm really, really anxious, one of the ways that it's manifested for me is just, I get really short with people. My fuse becomes, itty bitty. And so when I'm being rude or when I'm being a bitch to people, it's because I'm anxious, like 100%. Like there's something going on that like I'm either nervous for or said yes to that I, should have said no to. And I should have set that boundary and precedent and didn't. And so now I'm mad, at myself for not being able to set that boundary or whatever the case may be. And so I found like if I am in a bitchy mood, it is almost always because I am anxious about something, almost always. And what a horrible thing for like my friends and family, to have to deal with like, oh, why are you acting like this? Why are you being so rude to me? It's for sure my husband gets the brunt of it. I mean, without a doubt, like if he's like, why are you being crazy? I'm like, well, I probably know the answer to that, but I'm not willing to admit it yet, like, because I'm like embarrassed or something. So that's really where it comes from. Once I was like, oh my God, like it's totally true. Like anger is a secondary emotion, right? Like there's something else behind it. For me, being a bitch was like my mask, and then what's behind the mask. And so now I can like hopefully take a step back and be like, okay, what of these 99 coping skills can I do to not be a bitch to the people that I love and care about? And what can I do differently to make sure that, I'm acting in a way that I want to act, how I want to be perceived. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily true for everyone. Like not everyone becomes a total raging bitch when they are anxious. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I would definitely say it happens to a lot of people.
So many, trust me.
So
I
many.
project sometimes too. Over the past year or so, I'm definitely working on managing those emotions and that anger before I react, because it's just not fair to anyone, like as you're snapping.
Right. And it's like, especially I think once we realize that we are doing that, it's like, okay, now it is totally not okay if I continue this. Like I have to actively be doing something different. Because once you're aware of it, then for sure we need to be changing it. If you're unaware, then work on some self-reflection and start figuring it out. But yeah, I think definitely it's just a mask that we wear, and we need to start, taking that thing off and just figuring out what's going to work better for us, for our loved ones. Definitely.
Last couple of questions for you. I have no idea where the time went. I'm like, did we talk about anything yet? I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I haven't asked for anything. When you are the line of work that you're in, what are the most common themes you're seeing with people, like in relative to what we're talking about today?
No, really good question. I would say the biggest theme that I've been noticing lately are a lot of ADHD diagnoses, especially for women and
children or adults,
especially like adult women. And I think, I don't know, I'm kind of like waiting to see how this plays out, because it's just really, I started noticing it maybe a couple months ago, but it feels like, and part of this is a social media thing, but part of it just in general work and things. I think a lot more people, like I said, women, like young adult women, are being diagnosed with ADHD. And some people have absolutely like latched onto that like label or to that diagnosis and feel so validated for it, which is by all means great if that's how you feel. Some people are really, really nervous because they don't want a diagnosis. And some people like avoid therapy like the plague, or avoid, talking about things or getting too in depth because they don't want a label. I'll say one thing about that just for people's knowledge, because they don't know. From an insurance standpoint, therapists have to label you with a diagnosis, whether it's, a really mild something or not, whatever. But whatever they clinically feel like is appropriate, they have to label you in order for insurance companies to pay. So
that's a messed up system.
Is super messed up. So there is something called an adjustment disorder, which pretty much like you're going through something in your life and you're adjusting, and it's not, you didn't adjust, maybe as well or as quickly or whatever as like a normal, quote unquote, normal or typical, thing might have been. The adjustment is taking a little bit longer. This is often seen, in like retirement. Like retirement is a huge adjustment for people, or transitioning into motherhood, or, there's a dozen, and it doesn't have to be like a huge transition either. It can be like, I don't know, a pandemic that has happened, and the transition in the pandemic and or out of a pandemic. So that diagnosis is really something that's commonly used for that. But I will say, if you fit criteria for having generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder or whatever, the gamut of disorders are, you have to be diagnosed with something in order for insurance to pay on it, which is a lot of times why some clinicians just choose to not work with insurance, because they might not feel like a diagnosis is appropriate or whatever. So that's a whole nother hour's worth of conversation. But just so people know that and don't have to be necessarily afraid of a label. sometimes ADHD can be a really scary diagnosis for people because they're like, oh, that means my brain is atypical. It doesn't function properly. It's, all these different things that may or may not be true depending on how you look at it. But that's definitely something that's trending. And I would say it's related to this in that a lot of the ways in which ADHD is manifested and is shown is similar to anxiety, right? Like I said before, getting that drink of water, but you see 6 other things that need to be done while you're walking to the fridge to fill up your glass. And instead of just going to the fridge and filling up your glass, now you're stopping and, fixing the pillows on the couch or doing this or creating those lists, like never ending lists, whether they're paper planner, in your phone, over here, wherever. There's lists everywhere. Not being able to focus on one single train of thought, only being able to like get deep in work for 20 minutes before needing a break. Like there's all sorts of different things, but the overlap between symptoms of anxiety and symptoms of ADHD, I think are really being noticed more. And I haven't decided if I agree or if I disagree with it. I'm not sure. But like I said, I'm curious to see how that plays out, what that means for people, because it kind of goes both ways. It goes back to the individual. Like, do you want that label? Do you want that diagnosis to feel validated? Then by all means, if you're like, I don't like that, that doesn't feel true to me, then okay, then don't put so much emphasis on it.
I'm glad you brought this up because the last few months I've been questioning whether I'm ADHD. I'm normally a very focused person. Like if I'm in a conversation with someone, I'll always be very focused, but I find work lately, I'm like literally not even 5 minutes into a task and I'm like already onto a different one and a different one and a different one. I'm just like, oh my God, what did I even start with? And I find myself not getting as much done lately. And I'm like, this is not normal for me. So I don't know like how it's happening.
Gosh, and oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever about this because I have so many questions. And I operate in what's called the person and environment perspective. So it just, your environment is impacting who you are, whether that's past, present, eventually your future, but also like, what is your work looking like right now? What is your home life looking like right now? What are your relationships looking like? And I explain it to people as though like you are typically like, when we think of a person, think of it portrait mode and for pictures or something. It's just you, your head, your face, whatever. But person in an environment is like broadening the lens and making sure you're seeing the entire landscape. So what does that look like? Who's your community? Your supports and like all of that. And how is that, all of those things influencing you and what you're doing today and what's happening in your life, and where can we adjust to make betterment really happen? Gosh, we should talk more on that though, because I'm so curious about it.
We will. Last question before I let you go. Yeah. Anyone going through anything right now? I think you've given a lot of good examples of great coping mechanisms, but just from your experience, whether they're dealing with divorce, whether themselves or whether their own family or in bad relationships or anything, or maybe they're at a point in their life where they felt like you were at 15 years old and thank God your mom was home when you walked into the door. What hit home advice would you leave the audience with to let them know, like, I'm proof it'll be okay?
Yeah, that is such a good, but such a loaded question. Because again, I'm like, it's different for so many people, but I will say like, I love the term, everything is figure outable. I don't know like where I even heard that, right?
I think it's Marie Forleo.
Really? Okay. I need to write that down. So I actually like know, but yeah, I heard that and a while ago or whatever, but it's true. It's like, it might not happen in 5 minutes. It's okay. It's okay to be like bad at stuff. You don't have to like figure it out like this instant, but you can figure it out and you'll have that turning point. And again, it's like not these like big, huge epiphanies that need to happen. It's not like it was like my mom being home. That's it. Like that's what changed me, for the better and helped me, a bunch of different things then. And so I think that is so true to the core for generalized blanket statement of we can do this, we can do hard things. I think Glennon Doyle says that one, like we can do hard things with simple changes or something along those lines, where it's like, again, that sip of water is so simple, but makes a big difference for really hard days, and everything can be figured out. Lean on your people, make sure you're asking for support, and which is so hard but so figure outable too, but yeah, I would say that's probably my go-to advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's her book, Marie Forleo, like that's her book title.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you. I need
to I've listened to it on audio. It's really good.
I have 2 Audible credits right now.
There you go. Get that one. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Lindsey, This has been the quickest hour I've ever done in my life. Like, I don't even know if I've asked you anything yet, but I've been sitting here just like listening of like, you're a really good storyteller. And also just like so much advice is coming out without you even realizing you're giving advice. So I just want to thank you so much. I know we only met recently and we got on the podcast really quickly. So I'm just so thankful that we were able to do this. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Did you know that I'm not only a podcast host, but in my full-time career, I am a Toronto-based real estate agent. In 2021, I closed 100 deals. Yes, you heard that correctly, 100. So if you or someone you know is a busy professional looking to get into the Toronto real estate market and looking to work with a realtor who values your time, make sure to reach out to me and let's get connected. And in the meantime, we'll see you here back next week.